All right, so there's actually another type of three-step equation out there where the third step that you have to do is to distribute only. So we've already covered what to do if you only have to combine like terms. Now let's cover what to do if you have to distribute. But before we do that, let's just do a basic review on what I mean by distributing. So you might remember from our previous unit that we talked about what to do if we see 5 sets of this thing right here. Now in elementary school, you learned what to do if you saw a 5 times -2, and you guys know that that answer is -10. And you also know that if we see a 5 right next to the letter B, that means 5 times B. So here, when you see a 5 next to both of them, it means 5 times the -2 and 5 times the B. So I use these arrows to show that we have to multiply 5 times the -2 and 5 times the B. Now when we do 5 times -2, we get a -10. And when we do 5 times B, we get 5B. So we have distributed, but you might remember from that unit that we had some grammar rules and we said that the constant always goes last. So right here, boxed in red, is kind of the official answer. We have 5B minus 10. All right, let's take a look at another example. Now with this one, when there's just this minus sign out there, a lot of you guys forgot that means you're supposed to distribute a -1. Another way you can think of it as to take the opposite of everything you see inside here. So the opposite of 3c is -3c, and the opposite of 1 is -1. So again, you could distribute -1 times 3c is the -3c, and -1 times 1 is -1. And this one right here is already a final answer because it has the constant last, so this one's good to go. So those were just a couple of examples of reminding you guys what to do when you have to distribute. Another thing that I want to mention real quick, actually, let me just get a new page for this. If you guys see something like this, 12 minus 5 times 2x plus 3. Okay, let's just review real quick that in this problem, the -5 is what gets distributed. You don't do 12 minus 5 and get a 7 and distribute that. That's a really big common mistake. I wanted to just go ahead and remind you guys about that at the very beginning of this video, that this is wrong because in order of operations, you're supposed to multiply before you subtract. So we do not want to subtract first. Nope. So let me get rid of that because that is wrong. We don't want to see that on the board anymore. Now, if I distribute a -5, okay, the -5 is what's getting distributed. I'm going to get a -10x right here. And then this is going to be a -15. Notice that if the answer is negative, I just write a minus sign in the problem. And then I'm going to bring down the 12. All right. Now we have to combine like terms, which is something that we just covered in a previous video. So when you see 12 minus 15, that's a -3. 12 minus 15 is -3. And then I'm just going to bring down this -10x. So that's how it works if you have a number out in front. You want to make sure you distribute first and then combine those like terms. And we're going to cover that more in a little bit. But I just wanted to review again, when you see a number out here, even if there's a number in front of it, this is what gets distributed. All right, so that's a review on distributing. So what do you do when you see these equations? If you see when you see these equations, what do we see? We see parentheses. So if we see parentheses in these equations, we likely have to distribute. So we've got 3 sets of 2c, and that's where I'm going to get this 6c. And then I'm going to do 3 sets of -7, which is where I get -21. And again, if the answer is negative, you just write subtraction. Now we have the equals 15, we have the equals 15, and right here, y'all, we now only have 1, 2 terms. So we're ready to kind of drop our line and recognize that we have a negative constant. So we're going to add 21 to both sides, and this is going to cancel out. And I'm just going to bring down 6c. And then 15 plus 21 is where I get this 36. Now, since my coefficient is 6, I'm going to divide both sides by the 6, and this cancels out over here. So we have c. And then we have 36 divided by 6, which is 6 over here. So we have now solved. And again, we had 3 steps. This time our first step was right here. We distributed. Then our second step right here, we got rid of the constant like we're used to doing. And then the third step right here, we got rid of the coefficient like we're used to doing. Now to check, we think C is 6. So let me actually pull Desmos back up. And let me clear out. Okay, cool. So here's Desmos, and we've got that the expression was a 3, and then we had 2C minus 7, and we're going to close those parentheses. And down below, we think that C equals 6. Now notice when I solve, if C does equal 6, see how it's the 15, which it was supposed to be. So we know we did everything right over here, and we've used Desmos to check. All right, cool. Now let's come over to the next model problem. So for this one, we're distributing a negative 5. And so negative 5 times 2x's is where I get my negative 10x. And now since a negative 5 times a positive 4 is a negative 20, I'm putting minus 20. Now this is set to equal 56. So we took care of our first step, we distributed. Now we have two terms, so we're ready to drop our line and solve. Since we have a negative 20, we're going to add 20 to both sides. That's going to cancel out over here. And 56 plus 20 is 76. Now because my coefficient is the negative 10, I'm going to divide both sides by this negative 10, and that cancels out. And here, 76 divided by negative 10 is a negative 7.6. Remember, decimals and fractions are fair game at this point in 7th grade. So this one, let's just clear this out. This one we said was a negative 5, and then there was a 2x plus 4. And we solved and got that x was a negative 7.6. So if we're right, we get a 56 here, and that is what we were supposed to get over here. So we are all set with that. Okay? Now, on this page, I just covered the only other like 3-step type of equation right here where you have to distribute only. I'm going to continue on and now show you guys in this video all the way up to 4 steps, which is basically when we're putting distributing and then combining like terms together into one big huge problem. All right. So the top part was still just 3 steps because you had to distribute and then you have 2 terms. So now let's take a look at what happens when you've got all of this stuff to do. Now you might remember that in PEMDAS we're supposed to multiply before we add or subtract, and distributing is really just multiplying, so that's why this comes first. Then we combine like terms because that's when you're adding or subtracting. So we're basically following PEMDAS here still. So let's take a look at this very first example together. We see parentheses, so like it said up here, y'all, chances are when you see parentheses, you're going to have to distribute. So right here, I have this thing is in parentheses, and so is this. So I'm going to distribute on this side. I'm going to distribute a 3. All right, so my first step here, I'm distributing. This is where I get my 3, and then this is my 12y. And I'll put that in red so you can just kind of see that it matches my distributing. And then I'll distribute over here in blue this negative 2. So negative 2 times 5y is where I get this negative 10y. And then a negative 2 times a negative 3. This time it's a positive, so I'm going to put plus 6. Negative times negative is positive. All right, so we took care of the first step, we distributed. Now let's go after our like terms. I have a 12y's minus 10y's, and 12 of them minus 10 of them is where I'm going to get 2 of them. For my constants, I have a 3 plus a 6, which gives me this 9. So we have now completed our first 2 extra steps. We distributed. Now we combine like terms. Now we have a 2-term equation left to solve. So I'm going to kind of draw like a little squiggly because now this is back to a lot of stuff you've already learned a long time ago. You're going to drop your line and solve. We've got a positive 9, so we're going to subtract 9 on both sides. 25 minus 9 is 14. And I just bring down the 2y. And now I'm going to divide both sides by the 2, so this cancels out. And here we get a 7. So again, distribute, then combine like terms. And then you get rid of the constant, that's the next term, and then get rid of the coefficient, and that's the 1, 2, 3, 4 steps right there. Distribute, combine, get rid of the constant, get rid of your coefficient, and that's the 4-step equation right here. Now, y'all know I'm about to check. Don't let me forget to check. All right, so for this one, let me move that back over. All right, let's clear that out. And this time it was a 3, and we had 1 plus 4y. Cool. And then we're going to say minus 2 times 5y minus 3. And we got that y was 7. So let's see. All right. Did I mess up? 3, 1, 4y, a minus 2, a 5y minus 3. If we put 7, it's telling me that it should be a 23, and we over here should get a 25. So since I didn't get the same thing, let's go find my mistake over here. Let's see where I messed up. So I think I found it, and I think it's right here, that 25 minus 9. 25 minus 9 is actually a 16. And 16 divided by 2 should be an 8. So now let's see if we found our mistake. If we make this an 8, hey, there we go. See how it fixed it? And now we're at a 25. So that just modeled how when you plug this in, if you're getting the wrong thing, that lets you know to come over here and kind of retrace your steps. And I found my mistake. 25 minus the 9 was actually a 16 instead of a 14. And I was able to correct, and now we're ready to move on. All right, cool. So for the next one, I see a set of parentheses, so I'm going to have to distribute. And when I distribute 5 times 2x, I get 10x. And 5 times negative 11 is my negative 55. So I took care of the first step, I distributed, and this time we only had one set of parentheses, so we only had one thing to distribute, and we took care of it there. But now we got to combine like terms. So I've got 10x's plus 3x's is where I get this 13x, and then I just copy down everything else. So we took care of our first 2 steps, and now we're ready to drop that line and solve. We're going to add 55 to both sides. Negative 3 plus 55 is 52. And then I bring down my 13x because this cancels out. Now when I divide both sides by 13, 52 divided by 13 is 4. And let's pull up Desmos now to see where we're at with that. All right, so this one was a 5 parentheses 2x minus 11, and then we got plus 3x. And we think that x should be a 4. And it looks like when x is 4, we get a negative 3, which is what we should have over here. So we did everything right. And that is, we're almost done with this video here. I just wanted to point out that in this video right here, in the past 13 minutes, I've covered a 3-step when you have to distribute only, and then 4 steps if after you distribute, sometimes you might realize that now you need to combine like terms. And that concludes the video. Thank you for watching.